Well, thank you very much for his speech. Now, to conclude case for government, please welcome the final speaker from Tilbury.
Ladies and gentlemen, what we just heard was the assumption that children are as rational as adult people. Of course, adult people are rather being effectively punished by telling them that, showing them the work life in a hospital, which they've just violated, or letting them work in a store to tell them how this is fundamental to the shop owner. But this is something that children doesn't understand. They have not the capability of understanding complex settings. That is why we believe that punishing adults with physical means is just ineffective, because they are fully rational and can be punished more effectively by other means. But with children, we see that punishing physically is a very effective mean. Then he told us that the problem is that we teach them that violence is a solution to problems, and that we teach them to respect power. Well, according to this, we shouldn't punish at all, because if we put someone to prison, we tell them that the solution to problems is that locking someone away. The point is that that is the reason why the state has a monopoly. Every violence that the state acts against its citizen is something that the citizen shouldn't do to any other citizen. Of course. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't use violence. And that brings basically down any of these points, because effective it is just because children. And the state's obligation not to act violently against a citizen is just rubbish, because we tell them that that is the state's monopoly in power. And only the policeman and only the state may use this power, and no one else. In overall, not the parents. Now I'm going to sum up this speech, this debate, by first explaining the use of physical disciplining children, how this works and how this will be effectively and help the development of the child, and secondly talk about the responsibility of the state. Now, children are not terminally developed persons. They have not a final mindset. They are not developed totally in their moral duties and their moral in what they do. The children we are talking about lack a correct set of borders and limits to their actions and to their behavior. This is what we as second crop stand for. The development of the child is not yet set. We say that children always try to explore the borders of what is valid and what is invalid. They always try to widen the borders as to finally come to the state where they know exactly where the border is of correct action and wrong actions. That is why this is development. That is why we believe that children will always try to cross borders. Now, if they cross the borderline without any consequence, they add this action that they just committed to the set of actions that are okay, that are right, that may be allowed in our society. And we say if we have parents which are unable to, any reason, we say the state must step in and provide these steps. The point is that we once allow these borders to be passed, the next step is to cross the next border. And at the point where the first border of criminal action is crossed, and this child recognizes, well, I'm not punished, I may do that again. There is no bad consequence for me. Why shouldn't I redo this action? And we say at some step, he gets in contact with criminals, with petty criminals. And that is where the criminal career starts. And then he becomes the criminal in the later on in his life. And that is what we want to prevent on that point.
Okay, if you want to punish children more, please justify why you need to slap them and not punish them by any other means.
Right. Nature of a child's mind. That is what we, throughout our debate, have explained to you. And they have not given us any reason why this is wrong. The child does not oversee all the consequences of his behavior. He doesn't yet know, he is not yet aware of his actions that he is taking. Because they don't link all causal events to each other. They do not know any causal relation between action and consequences. That is exactly why delayed punishment doesn't work. That is why we must have a temporal correlated punishment. That is why the punishment must come directly after the action, and not by sitting down with him and telling that the shop owner is bad off after he's had his sprayed graffiti on his wall. He doesn't acknowledge the complex setting of that shop owner being violated in his rights. He is not a debater at the European Championship. He is a small child. So the point is, we must take direct punishment, and this is the only punishment that is effective in showing him the direct limit and border of his action. And that is why it is effective, and that is why we help the development in changing the direction where the borders, where the child can see the borders. Now, the second point, the responsibility of the state. We've all over and over heard, well, the problem is that teachers are forbidden to do so, that parents are forbidden to do so. Why should police be allowed to do so? First of all, we say, teachers and parents both need a trustworthy relation to the child in order to be able to execute their tasks. It is not able to tell someone anything, to explain anything to someone who doesn't believe that you're on his side. If you have someone who violates your trust relation by slapping you, that destroys the trust relation and makes it unable to teachers to teach and for parents to give love to the children. But we say no policeman has to be trusted. We say a policeman has two tasks, and they just limit the task of policemen to one thing, namely to protect. But we say there is a second task in obtaining social order. And if that inherits that we must use violence, we say that's totally fine, because being trusted by people is not necessary in order to uphold the social order. But furthermore, we say the state is responsible and should take action at this point, because we see that either parents have failed in showing the limits and borders of behavior, or secondly, because they do not know which actions to take against the bad behavior that is already in place by the children. Now, that is why we say if the weakest part of our society, the children, are not helped and educated correctly by the parents, the state should take measures which may include violence in order being the most effective way to train them to help. For these reasons, I beg to propose this very important.